Hey guys, what's up? MadSeason here, back with another Legion class guide. This is an ongoing series where I go over the core gameplay of each class and spec in the Legion beta, and sort of give you an idea of how they're played and how their core mechanics work. This time, we'll be going over the Fury Warrior. There hasn't been too big of changes for the Fury Warrior this expansion, at least not on the level of some of the other classes. You're of course still on the Rage system. You generate this from dealing damage through your auto attacks and also through certain skills. Your overall class identity remains largely the same. You're this berserking juggernaut who forgoes defense for the sake of all-out offense. You dual-wield two weapons and you use blind rage as a driving force to take down your enemies no matter the cost. To support this mentality, Enrage is back to being a double-edged sword to where it helps you offensively, but weakens you defensively. It's a centerpiece of the spec, and due to how powerful it is, it's something you want to optimize as much as you can. I'll talk about that more in depth in a bit. Anyways, let's get our usual disclaimers out of the way. The Warrior is not my main class on Live. I did a lot of training on both Live and Legion to get a good feel of how the spec plays and how it's changing for this expansion, but keep in mind that this is from a very casual Warrior's perspective. Just something to remember when I talk about a spell or give my opinion on something. And by all means, if you catch any errors, feel free to let me know so I can patch them up with an annotation. Also keep in mind that this is all beta gameplay, so things that you like or don't like are always subject to change. A lot of spells have been changed, removed, or added. I'll go over all of them one by one in the spell book, and I'll also show you them all in action so you can get a good idea of how the spec plays to see if you would like it or not. I'll sort of go over these in order of importance, putting a higher priority on the bread and butter abilities that make up the core of the Fury spec. And at the end of the video, I'll show you some real fights and narrate them a bit so you can see how all of it comes together. And as usual, as I'm going through these, keep an eye on the bottom right hand corner of the screen if you want to see the tooltips for the exact numbers and such. First up, we have our classic Bloodthirst. This deals a medium amount of physical damage to a single target and heals you for 5% of your maximum health. It generates 10 rage and it has a base 4.5 second cooldown, so it's a decent source of damage and healing as well. It's a really important attack because it's how we trigger our new Enrage. Your Bloodthirst critical strikes now enrage you, increasing your attack speed by 100%, but it also increases the damage you take by 30% for 4 seconds. So like I mentioned earlier, this is a double-edged sword. It's a huge source of damage, but it can also get you killed if you're not careful, and it really plays into that raging berserker feel. The attack speed is great not only for the damage, but for the rage generation as well. A big chunk of our rage generation is from auto attacks, so haste in general plays a big role with this spec, I think. The 4-second window is quite small, so you have to be on your toes and ready to take full advantage of it whenever you get that Bloodthirst crit. Anyways, next up we have Raging Blow. When you use this, you strike your opponent with both weapons for a medium amount of physical damage, a little less in comparison to Bloodthirst. You can only use it while enraged, and it generates 5 rage. So it's like a weaker version of Bloodthirst. It deals a little less damage and generates half the rage, and you need to be enraged to use it. A redeeming quality is that it doesn't have a cooldown, so it's spammable, which adds on to the burst you get from Enrage. Speaking of burst, next up we have our main rage spender, Rampage. This is one of 3 of our baseline rage spenders. It costs a whopping 85 rage, and when you use it, you unleash a series of 5 strikes to your target for a heavy amount of physical damage over 2 seconds. And it also enrages you. So it's a pretty big amount of damage over a short time, rightfully so considering the cost. What's good about this is that it isn't a channeled attack, which is what you would expect just by reading the tooltip. This means you don't have to stop everything until it finishes. You can use other abilities while you're performing your flurry to just pile on the damage. You can even go out of range before you finish your combo and you'll still get full damage, so they give you a lot of freedom with it, which is nice. Next up we have our downtime spell, Furious Slash. This deals a light amount of physical damage to a single target, and it increases the critical strike of your next Bloodthirst by 15% until it crits. It has no cooldown, and it stacks up to 6 times for a total of a 90% increased chance to crit. The buff itself lasts for 8 seconds, so it's plenty of time to get a Bloodthirst or a Rampage in and not lose your stacks. The only downside is its low damage and the fact that it doesn't generate any rage, so like I said, this is just what you're going to be using when Bloodthirst is on cooldown, and you're not enraged or you can't Rampage yet. Next up we have our other main rage spender, Execute. This costs 20 rage and it deals a massive amount of physical damage to a single target, and it's only usable on enemies who have less than 20% health. This one pretty much speaks for itself, I think. It's been a staple for warriors for as long as I can remember, and it probably takes precedence over Rampage as your rage spender as soon as you hit that 20% range. We also have a really nice artifact trait that makes it even better that I'll go over later. And lastly for our rage spenders, we have Whirlwind. This is of course our AoE. This deals a medium amount of physical damage to all enemies within 8 yards of you, and it also causes your next Bloodthirst to strike up to 4 additional targets, so that's 5 total, and it generates 3 rage for each target hit. all at the cost of 10 rage. I really like the bloodthirst buff that's tied to this because if we didn't have that, we would just be spamming this, which would be a little boring. This gives us some really good cleave damage and some nice self-healing as a bonus. And unfortunately, you only get the healing from a single bloodthirst. Trust me, that's one of the first things I checked. Next up, we have a DPS cooldown, Battle Cry. This instantly gives you 100% crit chance for 5 seconds, and it has a 1 minute cooldown. So once again, this follows along with the scheme of things of your spec being pretty bursty. Just putting the damage aside, this is really good because remember, your bloodthirst crits enrage you, which increases your attack speed by 100% for 4 seconds and unlocks Raging Blow. It all builds off of each other, and I think the 1 minute cooldown on this is extremely generous because you can absolutely blow things up with this. Next up, I'll go over our defensive cooldowns. First up, we have Commanding Shout, which has seen a change. All of the generic buffs have been removed this expansion, so this is changed accordingly. This has a 3 minute cooldown, and when you use it, it gives you and all raid members within 30 yards of you a 15% increase to your maximum health for 10 seconds. And after it wears off, the health is lost. It's actually just our old rallying cry. I'm not really sure why they renamed it. I guess they just thought Commanding Shout sounded better. But still, it's a handy defensive cooldown to have, and it combos nicely with your Bloodthirst heal because remember, that's based off your maximum life. Next up, we have Enraged Regeneration, which has also seen a rework. This now reduces all damage taken by 30%, and it causes your Bloodthirst to heal you for an additional 20% health. It has a duration of 8 seconds, a cooldown of 2 minutes, and it's usable while stunned. So this no longer has a direct heal tied to it, but the Bloodthirst effect is really nice because it's additive, meaning Bloodthirst heals you for 25% of your maximum life. Right now with my current haste with eye level 680 gear and the 8 second duration, I can get out 2 Bloodthirst before it wears off, so that's a 50% heal, which is really nice considering we get that 30% reduced damage. Again, I think this puts even more importance on haste because that reduces the cooldown of your Bloodthirst. If you can get that under a 4 second cooldown, you'll be able to get a 75% heal from this as long as you have 100% uptime on your target. This isn't even factoring in buffs like Bloodlust too, so it definitely has a lot of potential. The cooldown is longer compared to Draenor's 1 minute cooldown, but considering how strong it is, I think it's a fair trade. Next up, I'll go over our more miscellaneous abilities. We of course still have Charge. This has an 8 to 25 yard range, and when you use it, you charge at an enemy, closing the distance and rooting them in place for 1.5 seconds. It generates 20 rage and it has a 20-second cooldown. This also got a slick looking graphic update, and something I think is really neat is that you let out a battle cry when you use it. I'm sure that's not a huge deal for most people out there, but I thought it was a really neat thing to add. And we also have our Heroic Leap. This has an 8 to 40 yard range, a 45-second cooldown, and when you use it, you leap to a targeted location and deal a small amount of physical damage to all enemies within 8 yards of the impact zone. You'll be glad to know that they finally fixed this. The way this works on live, it seems like if you have a pebble in your way, you'll get an error message whenever you try to use it. Now you can pretty much use it wherever you want. Across chasms, up to rooftops, as long as you're able to stand at the target location, you can use it, which is really nice. And once again, the animation is looking great. Another thing to note, and this is with every target area spell now, but you can no longer place this out of range, which makes aiming it a little bit easier. If you move your mouse past the 40 yard range, the target reticle will stop right at the max. So just a nice quality of life change to make this a little easier to use on the fly. Next up we have Heroic Throw. This is pretty much the same. This is our ranged poke. It has an 8 to 30 yard range, and when you use it, you throw your weapon at your target, dealing a light amount of damage and generating a high amount of threat. Not much else to say, it's just something to have for pulling pretty much. Next up we have our Fear, Intimidating Shout. This causes your target to cower in place and up to 5 enemies within 8 yards of you to flee for 8 seconds. It has a 1.5 minute cooldown, and any damage will break the effect. Next up we have our Anti-Crowd Control, Berserker Rage. This removes and grants you immunity to fear, sap, and other incapacitate effects for 6 seconds, and it has a 1 minute cooldown up from the 30 seconds in Draenor. You can improve this to also enrage you through talons. I'll talk about that more in a bit. And we also have our AoE Slow, Piercing Howl. This is pretty much unchanged. It costs 10 rage and it snares all enemies within 15 yards of you, reducing their movement speed by 50% for 15 seconds. So just a really nice slow to have, and once again another really cool spell effect to add to the mix. And that's pretty much it for all of the important combat oriented stuff anyways. There are a couple others I haven't mentioned yet, but they're functionally the same pretty much. Maybe just percentage or cooldown changes. I'll mouse over them here quickly and you can pause the video if you want to see the exact numbers, but abilities I haven't mentioned yet are Pummel, which is our interrupt. and Taunt. As for passives, like most classes this expansion, we don't have a whole lot going on. We only have 3, including our Enrage, which I already talked about. Our mastery is called Unshackled Fury. This also gives you a damage bonus while you're enraged, granting more and more as you stack mastery. It's pretty straightforward, but it's also incredibly powerful, and I have to imagine that it's going to be a pretty important stat for us this expansion. And we also have Titan's Grip, which of course allows us to dual wield two-handed weapons, and it also increases our maximum life by 20%, which sort of combats that increased damage taken during enrage, so it's definitely welcome. It's far from completely cancelling it out, but it does placate it at least a little bit, especially considering that once again our Bloodthirst heal is percentage based. And that's every ability and passive. If I didn't list anything from Draenor, it was either moved to talents, removed entirely, or they just haven't put it back yet. Next up, I'll go over the revamped talents, and just like the abilities and passives, I'll go over every single talent here and show you them in action. I'll also have a link to the talent calculator in the description if you want to see them for yourself. First up, for the level 15 tier, we have War Machine. When you have this, killing a target grants you a 30% haste and movement speed boost for 10 seconds. It's a pretty huge buff. I think it's more aimed towards solo gameplay and possibly even PvP. One thing to note is that you yourself have to get the killing blow. If a party member gets the last hit, you don't get the buff, so you sort of have to compete against them. Having Execute of course helps in this regard, but it's still something you should know before taking this talent. Next up, we have Endless Rage. This causes your auto attacks to generate 30% additional rage. This is definitely more reliable than War Machine, and it'll get more and more valuable the more haste you have. And crit chance too, since Enrage gives you that 100% attack speed increase. Anyways, lastly for the level 15 tier we have Fresh Meat. This causes your Bloodthirst to have a 30% increased chance to crit on targets above 80% health. I really like this one because we do have a bit of ramp up time before we start getting Enrages and Rampages, and this gives you a really good head start in the early stages of the fight. One problem is that it's pretty much a dead talent once you exit that range. Because of that, I think rating wise Endless Rage may be the superior choice. This seems more aimed towards shorter fights in PvP, I think. For the level 30 tier we have Shockwave, which has seen a return. It's pretty much unchanged from Draenor. This creates a shockwave 10 yards in front of you, dealing a light amount of damage and stunning all enemies hit for 4 seconds. It has a 40-second cooldown, and if you hit at least 3 targets with it, its cooldown is reduced by 20 seconds. So just a really nice AoE stun to have. If you can get that 20-second reduction in, it's a 20-second cooldown, 4-second AoE stun, which is insane. Next up, we have Stormbolt. This also went relatively untouched aside from a reduction in range. This hurls your weapon at an enemy, dealing a light amount of damage and stunning your target for 4 seconds. It has a 20-yard range down from the 30-yard range in Draenor, and it has a 30-second cooldown. And lastly, for the level 30 tier, we have Double Time. This gives your charge ability a second charge, and it reduces the cooldown to 17 seconds down from the base 20 seconds. This is pretty handy, especially for PvP. It's a really good mobility boost, and the extra rage generation is nothing to dismiss. For the level 45 tier, we have Wrecking Ball. This causes your attacks to have a chance to make your next Whirlwind cost no rage and deal 200% increased damage. This makes Whirlwind a viable single target option, and it spices up your rotation a little bit, which I always welcome. The proc rate seems really good. It's hard to tell without any add-ons, but I think it's around the 10 to 20% range, which is really high with the way Art and Rage works. Next up, we have Outburst. This was that Berserker Rage buff I was talking about earlier. This causes Berserker Rage to enrage you as well. Remember, it has a 1-minute cooldown, so it's sort of few and far between. It is still nice to have the option to have an enrage on demand though. I think it makes sense to have this as a baseline effect, and instead maybe have this talent reduce the cooldown of Berserker Rage. That way you're not relying solely on Bloodthirst crits for your enrages, and you're not forced to take this talent if you want to have the option for an on-demand enrage. Anyways, lastly for the level 45 tier we have Avatar. This is unchanged from Draenor, it's another DPS cooldown. This transforms you into a Colossus, causing you to deal 20% more damage, and it removes all roots and snares when you use it. It has a duration of 20 seconds and a cooldown of 1.5 minutes. So 3 very different choices for this tier. I think my personal favorite is Wrecking Ball because it makes your rotation a little more interesting, but it is a pretty tough choice. For the level 60 tier we have Furious Charge. This causes your charge to also increase the healing of your next Bloodthirst by 300%, bringing it to a whopping 20% of your maximum life. This synergizes really nicely with Double Time, and if you took that, I imagine this would be a no-brainer. And it gets even better if you combo it with Enraged Regeneration. It seems like our defense this expansion is mainly through healing. Overall it's very strong, but we sort of have all of our eggs in one basket because of the fact that it's all tied to Bloodthirst. If we're able to close the distance, it's great, but if you're being kited and you don't have any melee targets, it's rough. Anyways, next up we have Bounding Stride. This reduces the cooldown of Heroic Leap by 15 seconds, bringing it down to 30 seconds. It also increases your run speed by 70% for 3 seconds after you land, so just a nice mobility boost to have. If you have this with double time, you seem really mobile. And lastly, for the level 60 tier, we have Warpaint. This causes you to take 20% increased damage from Enrage down from the base 30%. This one isn't bad, I guess. I think it's better suited as an artifact trait rather than a talent, though. I think talents should be more interesting like the other two choices in this tree, and we should save percentage changes like this for traits rather than full-blown talents. For the level 75 tier, we have Massacre. This makes your execute critical strikes to cause your next rampage to cost no rage. As you can imagine, this gives you a ton of burst potential because you can combo it with your battle cry and just alternate execute and rampage again and again over battle cry's 5-second duration. This is a really sick combo to have, and PvP wise I can't imagine anyone escaping it as long as you have the melee uptime on them. But the only downside to this is, just like fresh meat, it's a dead talent if your target isn't in the correct health range. Next up we have Frothing Berserker. If you took this, your damage is increased by 10% and your movement speed by 30% whenever you hit 100 rage. This one is kind of interesting because if you want to maximize your damage, you never want to cap out on rage. If you hit the cap more than once before it wears off, it doesn't stack. It just resets the duration, which is to be expected, I guess. I do think it's more aimed towards PvP due to that clashing with the rage cap though. And lastly, for the level 75 tier, we have our signature Bladestorm. This causes you to become an unstoppable storm of destructing force, striking all enemies within 8 yards with both weapons for a monstrous amount of physical damage over a base 6 seconds, which is increased by haste. During Bladestorm, you're immune to crowd control effects, and you can still use defensive abilities such as Enraged Regeneration and Taunt. And just like in Draenor, a sort of hidden effect with this is you can still auto-attack while it's active. I don't think there's really a lot that needs to be said about this ability. Most everybody knows about this even if you're on the receiving end of it. It's just an absolutely monstrous source of single target and AoE damage. I'm sure a good combo that a lot of people will be using is Battle Cry and then straight into a Bloodthirst for that Enrage, and then Bladestorm immediately after. Popping that with racials and trinkets results in some crazy damage, and it'll be fun in PvP, I'm sure. Next up, for the level 90 tier, we have Meat Grinder. This causes your Whirlwind to make your next rampage hit 4 additional targets for half its damage. So just a nice AoE boost here. Remember, Whirlwind also makes your next Bloodthirst cleave as well, so we have a lot of options for AoE, which is a good thing. Next up, we have Frenzy. This causes your Furious Slash to also increase your haste by 5% for 10 seconds, stacking up to 3 times. This can be good too. Haste, as I mentioned, seems like a very important stat for us this expansion. It makes Furious Slash more useful. However, one downside though is that I found that it clashes with Wrecking Ball if you took that. With the proc rate on those buffed Whirlwinds and with all of the other stuff going on in our rotation, I found that it's kind of hard to keep this up without sacrificing some damage. Oftentimes you'll have to hold off on a Bloodthirst or skip a Raging Blow to keep this up, so I definitely wouldn't take this along with Wrecking Ball, just one or the other. And lastly, for the level 90 tier, we have Inner Rage. This causes your Raging Blow to no longer require Enrage. Its damage is increased by 100%, but it also gets a 4.5 second cooldown. I really like this one. It's nice to have multiple options to change up your rotation. Single target wise, I think it's a tough choice between this and Frenzy. And finally, for the level 100 tier, we have Carnage, which reduces the cost of Rampage by 20 Rage. One of the issues I haven't mentioned yet is due to Rampage's high Rage cost, you can sometimes have trouble capping out on Rage. If you get bad timing with an Enrage proc at a high amount of Rage, you have 2 choices. Burn Rampage and sacrifice a Raging Blow for the sake of not capping out and wasting some damage, or you can hold off on Rampage and go for your Raging Blow spam and cap out on Rage. Either way, you sacrifice some damage and this talent eliminates that, which is nice. Anyways, next up for the level 100 tier, we have Reckless Abandon. This causes your DPS cooldown, Battle Cry, to also generate 100 Rage. So just a really nice boost to burst damage here. One of the downsides to the Massacre combo I mentioned earlier is that you would need to have ample Rage to pull it off. This eliminates that quirk and makes it more viable, so not too bad. And lastly, for the level 100 tier, we have our Dragon Roar, which has seen a slight change. This deals a light amount of damage to all enemies within 8 yards of you, and it no longer knocks them down. Instead, it now also increases all damage you deal by 20% for 6 seconds. The actual damage from this ignores all armor and it always crits, and it also has a pretty generous 20-second cooldown compared to Draenor's 1-minute cooldown. Overall for this tier, I think it's a tough choice, which honestly has been pretty rare as far as level 100 tiers go. A lot of the specs I've covered just have no-brainers, and I think Fury spec gives you 3 unique choices, and it's tough to pick just one. And that's it for all of the talents, as of this beta build anyways. Next up I'll talk about the artifacts for the Fury Warrior, and those are the war swords of the Valeriar, Odin's Fury, and Helia's Wrath. The artifacts themselves have an ability called Odin's Fury. This is a powerful AoE attack. This deals a heavy amount of fire damage to all enemies within 20 yards and a little more as a dot over 4 seconds, and it has a 45-second cooldown. It's pretty standard as far as artifact abilities go. It's actually similar to Ashbringer's ability except that it doesn't have that stun against undead and demons. But it is a welcome addition for both single target and AoE, I think. These artifacts also have some interesting passives you can unlock. You can find calculators for this all over the place. I'll have a link in the description, but I'll go over the more major ones here. First up, we have Rage of the Valeriar. This gives both your Rampage and Execute to have a chance to activate Berserking, increasing your attack speed and crit chance by 5% every second for 12 seconds. So this caps out at a whopping 60% increase to crit chance and attack speed by the time it wears off, which is pretty nuts. Next up, we have Juggernaut. This causes your Execute to increase the damage done by it by 5% for 6 seconds, stacking up to 99 times, which would be a total of a 495% increase in its damage at a full 99 stacks. Next up, we have Odin's Champion. This causes your Rampage to have a chance to make your offensive abilities reduce the cooldown of all of your abilities by 3 seconds. This is a really nice buff to Rampage, and I think it makes talents such as Carnage and Massacre way more valuable. The rest of these are pretty generic. Some interesting stuff, but mainly just percentage increases to abilities and whatnot. I'll mouse over these here quickly and you can pause the video if you want to read them. And like I said, I'll have a link to that calculator in the description if you want to check them out. You don't have to choose between any of these traits, you'll be able to get them all eventually. You just need to get enough artifact power, which you'll get by questing, PvPing, raiding, and so on. And that's it for all of the abilities, talents, and artifact traits, at least for this alpha build anyways. I'm sure they'll add more or change some stuff later on, but that's okay because the purpose of this video is just to give you a basic idea of how the spec is played, and that's something that's very unlikely to change as they update the game. Now let's put all of this together. The only way to get an idea of how the spec is played is to see it in action, so as always I'll show you some basic fights here and narrate them a bit. Here are some single target fights. For noteworthy talents I have War Machine, which is really good for leveling and solo play in general I think, Double Time for that double charge, Wrecking Ball for that whirlwind proc, and Bladestorm for that burst. Honestly, I think the gameplay is really smooth with this particular setup. It's pretty rare that I have that downtime where I need to spam Furious Strike until other abilities come up. With both Wrecking Ball and Inner Rage, you can fill in that dead time with Whirlwinds and Raging Blows instead. And you always have Odin's Fury and Bladestorm as a backup. This does bring up a problem though. Because you're not using Furious Slash, you're missing out on that increased chance for a Bloodthirst crit, which of course enrages you. Enrage, as I mentioned, is so strong right now that I think to maximize damage from this spec you really have to build around it. So you have a choice of, in my opinion, making the rotation more fun by taking talents such as Wrecking Ball and Inner Rage, but getting less enrages, which probably hurts your damage. Or you can go for what I think to be the less fun route and do your Furious Slash spam and get more damage because you're proccing Enrage more. Like I said though, it really is hard to tell without damage meters, and I'm not a number cruncher by any means, so take that as you will. And this is with unleveled artifact weapons too, so you gotta take that into account. I think a good solution for this whole situation would be to remove Furious Slash altogether, and just give its effect to Bloodthirst itself. This way, you don't have to make that choice between fun and DPS, and you can have both instead. But a problem with this is that at the end of the day we'll have one less button to push, which may make things a little too simple, so it's not always as easy as it seems. I'm not sure. Like I said, Warrior isn't my main class, so I feel out of my element with this discussion. I'll leave that up for you guys to decide, and I'll let you draw your own opinions from that. Anyways, here are some AoE fights. For talents I have Shockwave, Wrecking Ball, Bladestorm of course, Meat Grinder, and Reckless Abandon. Our AoE feels really strong even outside of Bladestorm. Whirlwind itself is pretty decent, but combine that with Wrecking Ball for the increased damage. Our artifact ability, the 5-target Bloodthirst, the 5-target Rampage, if you took that, makes it feel really solid. Outside of Bladestorm, we really shine in that 5-target range, but with the damage of our Whirlwind, Bladestorm, and to a lesser extent Odin's Fury, we're still good for situations where you have 10 or even 20 targets to AoE as well. In fact, here's a fight without Bladestorm, and as you can see, even Whirlwind can hold its own damage-wise, so you don't need to rely upon Bladestorm for your AoE, which is a good thing. And finally, here's a longer single-target fight. My talents are pretty much the same as my shorter single-target fight. I switched out War Machine for Endless Rage for that better rage generation, and I also picked up Stormbolt just to show off a stun. I would pick up Massacre, but I can't find any enemy in the game to survive that combo yet. They all died too quickly before I can get the full potential out of that, so I just grabbed Bladestorm instead. And it's really not much different than the short single target fights. You can customize your rotation a lot depending on what talents you pick, which is really nice. And you can set up some good burst with that Battlecry, Bloodthirst, Bladestorm combo I talked about earlier. But that's pretty much it. Hopefully now you have a better understanding and feel of how their core gameplay works. I really enjoy it. I've always liked that Raging Berserker feel, and I think they really nailed it this expansion. We have a lot of fun abilities, and everything visually just looks awesome in my opinion. It really is fun charging and leaping fight to fight and just being a killing machine. I think they've done a phenomenal job with the animations, and all of your abilities really give you that relentless juggernaut feeling. And the actual gameplay for me is really fun too. I tend to like bursty classes in general, and with the way spells and effects such as Enrage, Rampage, Execute, Battlecry, and Bladestorm work, it's right up my alley, and it's definitely a contender for my main spec this expansion. It's definitely not perfect though, which is to be expected I guess. It is a beta after all. I think one thing we're missing is utility. As you would know if you saw my other previews, I think it's really important for DPS specs to be able to do something other than damage to help out their teammates. Once you start tunnel visioning into one job, you really lose an element of what MMO should be about, working with each other and optimizing team play to take down a tough challenge. This expansion we've lost spells such as Intervene, Spell Reflect, and other abilities, and we really didn't get anything to replace them. Our only utility spell really is Commanding Shout, which don't get me wrong, it's good, but it's not enough by itself I think. Another issue I can see is Enrage. This passive is so powerful right now that I think to get the most damage as possible out of this spec is to play around it, meaning stacking crit, taking talents, anything to get it to proc as often as possible. The problem with this is the fact that you of course take more damage when it's active, meaning the stronger you get, the weaker you get too, which seems a little backwards. Don't get me wrong, it's good to have strengths and weaknesses, but I don't think those weaknesses should get stronger as you gear up, and when we really start getting enough crit to get a good uptime on Enrage, we'll be really hard on our healer's mana I think. I think a good solution to this would be to make our mastery also reduce the increased damage we take while enraged. This way you can stack crit to try to get that to proc as much as you can, and then stack mastery to increase the damage you deal and reduce the damage you take at the same time. Enrage will still maintain its double-edged sword property, which it should, and you can progress in such a way where you don't get more vulnerable as you gear up. So there's definitely room for improvement I think, but that's why we have these betas. If they fix those issues I mentioned, I believe this spec has a very bright future ahead of it, and I think a lot of people will love it. Heck, even with those issues, I'm loving this spec, and I've had an absolute blast making this video for you guys. Anyways, if you want to see more Fury gameplay, I also did a full dungeon run. No commentary on that though, just some raw gameplay for those of you who want to see more of what this spec is capable of. I'll have an annotation for that right here, and a link in the description if you want to see that. And as always, feel free to leave me a message about your opinion on the state of Fury spec for Legion, especially all of you veteran warriors out there. I always like hearing a pro's perspective on how these classes are changing and if you think it's for the better or for worse. Like I said, everything you saw here is from a very casual perspective. Hopefully I did it justice though. Whether or not you like the changes, I hope you at least found the video informative, interesting, or entertaining in some way. I had a lot of fun making it, and I hope you had a lot of fun watching it. Thanks for checking it out. I'll be doing guides like this for every spec for every class in the game, so keep an eye out for those if you're interested. And if you have any feedback or suggestions, feel free to leave me a message. There's always room for improvement. And once again, I'll have a poll up in the description if you want to vote on the next class. Anyways, I hope you found this video helpful. Give it a like if you liked it, and if you really liked it, let me know in the comments and subscribe. And as always, thanks for watching, good luck, and peace!